Hello, everyone. My name's Daniel Wright, and I'm 29 years old, the oldest son in what I can only describe as the Wright family circus. I say circus because there's always some kind of performance going on. My mom's guilt-tripping monologues, my dad's selective hearing, my middle sister Emily's never-ending drama, and my youngest sister Lily's delusions of princess-level entitlement. I've been the unofficial stage manager of this circus since I was old enough to hold a screwdriver and a sense of responsibility. My parents, Tom and Susan, are both in their late 50s. Dad retired early from the post office and now spends most of his days working on projects in the garage, which really means sitting in a lawn chair, drinking beer, and swearing at YouTube repair tutorials. Mom still works part-time at a dentist's office, but her real full-time job is guilt tripping. She's the kind of woman who could guilt a shark into eating tofu. My middle sister Emily is 27, married, and has a 3-year-old son named Aiden. She's loud, needy, always stressed, and somehow still the one who tries her best, according to Mom. And then there's Lily, the youngest, 23, the family baby who's been coddled since birth. She's engaged to Ryan, who's basically a golden retriever in human form. Nice enough, but allergic to hard work and entirely too comfortable living off my parents' generosity. I've been the responsible one for as long as I can remember. It started small, taking out the trash, mowing the lawn, helping Dad fix the car. Then it grew into paying bills that weren't mine, covering emergencies that weren't my fault, and emotionally babysitting adults who should have known better. When Mom needed help paying her surgery bill, I covered it without hesitation. When Emily forgot to pay her car insurance for half a year, I stepped in because she was in a tough spot. I've babysat Aiden so many times I can change a diaper faster than a NASCAR pit crew changes tires. My parents always said things like, "You're just better with responsibility," which was their polite way of saying, "You're the family's safety net and free labor." The thing is, I didn't even mind helping at first. It felt good to be needed. It felt like I was keeping the family afloat. But it got to a point where helping became expected, and every boundary I tried to set was treated like betrayal. 2 weeks ago, the circus hit a new level of absurdity. It was Sunday dinner, our sacred weekly ritual of overcooked food, passive-aggressive compliments, and backhanded guilt trips. Mom made her usual lasagna that had the texture of a tire and the charm of a wet sponge. I was, as always, the unpaid waiter and janitor, serving drinks, clearing plates, and trying to stop Aiden from feeding the dog half his meal. Everyone was in their usual roles, Dad zoning out with his beer, Emily talking over everyone about her stress, Lily scrolling through her phone while pretending to help. Right in the middle of dinner, Lily cleared her throat dramatically, like she was about to announce her Grammy win. She grabbed Ryan's hand, smiled, and said, "So, we have some news." My mom gasped like someone had dropped a diamond ring in her lasagna. Emily squealed. Dad clapped Ryan on the back, already congratulating him like he'd just hit a home run. Lily grinned and said, "We're going to have a baby." The table erupted. Mom was crying happy tears. Dad was saying something about how time flies. And Emily was already planning a baby shower theme. I was genuinely happy for her at first, until Lily turned to me and, with the fakest innocent smile I've ever seen, said, "You don't mind giving up your apartment, right?" At first I thought she was joking. I blinked and asked, "What?" She laughed nervously and said, "Well, yours is the biggest place, and we can't afford anything near downtown. Just for a while until we get settled." The air at the table changed instantly. I could feel everyone watching me, waiting for me to be the good son and just agree like I always do. I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "You're joking." Mom chimed in immediately like she had been rehearsing the speech all week. "Honey, they're starting a family. You're single and you're always working. You barely use that guest room." Emily jumped in with her signature smirk. "Yeah, Danny, it's not like you're doing anything with it." That was the moment something inside me snapped. I just sat there gripping my fork so tightly I thought it might bend. I said, I've helped everyone in this family. I paid Emily's bills. I babysit Aiden. I fixed Dad's car. I helped Mom with her hospital bills. And now you want me to hand over my apartment? Lily pouted, giving me her best innocent face, and said, "We thought you'd want to help. You always help." That sentence right there, the one that made my blood boil, "You always help." It wasn't gratitude. It was entitlement dressed up as affection. I didn't raise my voice, but I stood up, dropped my napkin on the table, and said, "Not this time." Then I left. The next morning, my phone was vibrating nonstop. 67 missed calls, 43 unread texts. Most were from Mom, a few from Lily, even one from Ryan. Apparently, after I walked out, Lily cried and said I'd ruined their announcement. Mom said I was selfish and making things harder for the family. Emily texted me, "Wow, guess we know who the favorite really is. You." That one made me laugh out loud. I'd been the family's free ATM for years, and now I was the villain because I said no. I ignored the calls for a day, but they didn't stop. Mom left a voicemail where she sounded like she was auditioning for a soap opera, saying, "I can't believe you'd let your sister struggle like this. She's pregnant, Daniel. Pregnant." Dad called too, but he was less dramatic. When I finally picked up, he sighed like a man who'd rather be anywhere else and said, "You know your mother. Just apologize, give them the place for a few months, and we'll figure something out." I said, "Dad, I pay $1,700 a month for that place. I worked overtime for years to afford it. Why do I have to lose my home because Lily got pregnant?" He didn't have an answer. He just mumbled something about family sticking together and hung up. For context, Lily has never held a full-time job in her life. She's done part-time barista gigs in influencer marketing, which basically means posting staged photos of protein shakes on Instagram. Ryan, her fiancé, works construction when he feels like it. My parents pay their car insurance, help with their groceries, and occasionally slip them cash because they're young and need help. Meanwhile, I've been fully independent since I was 22, paying my rent, loans, taxes, and still helping them whenever they asked. It wasn't even about the apartment anymore. It was about the fact that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. My parents see me as a resource, not a person. Lily and Emily see me as a backup plan, and the one time I said no, I became the selfish one. That night, I texted the family group chat, "I'm not giving up my apartment. Stop calling me." Then I blocked them all. I thought things would calm down once I blocked my family, but if there's one thing I should have known by now, it's that the right family circus doesn't pack up that easily. For a few days, it was quiet. My phone stopped buzzing, and I actually enjoyed the silence. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, watched TV, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. But of course, peace doesn't last when your mother has Facebook and a flair for melodrama. I found out through a coworker, someone who's friends with my mom on Facebook, that my family had turned the entire situation into a full-blown morality tale. Apparently, my mom had posted one of her long, cryptic statuses about how family unity is everything, and how selfishness can destroy bonds that took a lifetime to build. It wasn't hard to read between the lines. I knew exactly who the selfishness part was aimed at. The post had hundreds of likes and sympathy comments. People I hadn't seen since high school were writing things like, "So sorry you're going through that, Susan," and "You raised them better, some people just forget their roots." One person even commented, "Some kids don't realize how much their parents sacrifice." And my mom, of course, responded to every single one with those passive-aggressive prayer hand emojis and the words, "Thank you. It's been hard, but I trust God's plan." My mom thrives on public pity, always has. Growing up, she used to post statuses about how tired she was after helping her ungrateful kids. When Emily and I fought as teenagers, she'd write vague things like, "It's hard being a mother when your children turn on you." Now she had a fresh saga to milk, and I was the villain of her Facebook soap opera. When my coworker showed me the post, I just laughed. It was either laugh or lose my mind. But the real kicker came a few hours later when my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. It was from Emily. The caption read, "For the groceries you ate Sunday, the amount, $80." I stared at my phone for a solid minute, wondering if this was some kind of joke. I'd eaten one plate of lasagna that night. $80 for that rubbery nightmare? I nearly threw my phone across the room. I hit decline, blocked her on Venmo, and added her to the growing list of family contacts that were now permanently muted. I thought that would be the end of it, but of course, things never stay simple with my family. Later that week, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw my dad standing there, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I debated pretending I wasn't home, but I knew that if I didn't answer, he'd just keep knocking until my neighbors started to notice. He came in, sat on the couch, and started talking before I even offered him a drink. He said Mom was really upset and that Lily was under a lot of stress. He mentioned that Lily had decided she couldn't work anymore because of the pregnancy, and Mom was worried sick. He said, "She's emotional. Can't you help them out a little?" I just stared at him for a moment, trying to decide if he actually believed what he was saying. I told him that I already do help them out, that I just didn't want to lose my home. He sighed, nodded, and didn't push further. He left soon after, probably heading back to the garage to hide from Mom's storm. I wanted to believe that was the end of it. I wanted to think that maybe, after everything, they'd let it go. But then the universe decided to remind me who I was dealing with. A few days later, I got a text from my landlord. He's a pretty straightforward guy, older, no nonsense, handles things by the book. The text said something like, "Hey, just wanted to confirm something. Someone called the office claiming to be you, asking how to transfer the lease for your apartment. I didn't give any info, but I figured you'd want to know." I froze. My heart started pounding because I already knew who it was. I called him back immediately and asked if he knew who had called. He said the person didn't give their name but sounded young and nervous and mentioned being family. That was enough. It was Lily. I was furious. Not just annoyed or frustrated, furious in that deep, shaking way where you feel your pulse in your teeth. I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process the fact that my sister had actually tried to impersonate me to take over my lease. I texted her, and the conversation that followed was short but infuriating. She didn't deny it. In fact, she wrote, "You weren't going to need it much longer anyway." Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like she had every right to just take over the home I worked for. That was it. That was the final straw. I didn't even reply. I took a screenshot of her message and sent it directly to my landlord with the note, "This is the person who called you pretending to be me." He responded right away and thanked me for letting him know. A few hours later, he emailed me a written note for my file confirming that no one could modify the lease, access the account, or make any changes without my written and in-person consent. I printed it, signed it, and kept a copy for myself. I sent that message straight to my landlord and got a written note in my file stating no one could modify the lease but me. After the lease fiasco, things between me and my family went from tense to radioactive. I thought for once the message had finally landed, that I wasn't their personal ATM or backup housing plan. But if there's one thing I've learned about my family, it's that when one door closes, they find a window, kick it open, and crawl through with their drama dragging behind them. It didn't take long for me to find out that Lily and Ryan had officially moved back in with my parents. My mom called it temporary, but when my mom says temporary, what she really means is indefinite. The house, from what I heard, had turned into absolute chaos. My dad, who once prided himself on having a peaceful retirement, now spends most of his time hiding in the garage again, claiming he's organizing tools while drinking beer and watching old car repair videos on his phone. My mom, on the other hand, seems to thrive in the chaos. It gives her something to complain about while simultaneously making her feel needed. Emily still visits, but even she's getting tired of it. Her husband apparently refuses to set foot in the house anymore. According to what I heard from Emily during one of her passive-aggressive texts, he said, "It's like a daycare run by caffeine and crying." Honestly, that sounded about right. Between Aiden's tantrums, Lily's pregnancy mood swings, and my mom's constant need to be in control, that house must sound like a zoo crossed with a talk show. And yet, even with two adult daughters under her roof, my mom still can't seem to grasp the concept of boundaries. It started small, texts here and there, asking if I could help her figure out her phone or if I could come by to fix the Wi Fi. Then it turned into bigger, small favors. She called asking if I could babysit Aiden just for an hour while Emily ran errands. Then she called again asking if I could drive Lily to an OB appointment because Ryan had to work. Each time I said no, but she always had the same response. They're both so tired, Daniel. It was the same guilt-ridden tone she had used my whole life, the one that made me feel like saying no was the same thing as kicking a puppy. But this time, I didn't play along. I hung up the phone and didn't look back. The irony is that while all of this family chaos was unfolding, work was the only place that felt like a refuge. Except apparently I wasn't doing as good a job at hiding my frustration as I thought. One afternoon, my boss called me into his office. He's one of those guys who notices everything, the kind who can tell you're off your game before you even realize it yourself. He asked if everything was okay because I'd seemed distracted lately. I didn't want to get into the messy details, but I told him enough. The nonstop family drama, the constant requests for money, and the emotional exhaustion of being everyone's problem solver. He laughed, not in a cruel way, but in that I've been there kind of way, and said, "You need to start billing your family." It was meant as a joke, but it stuck with me for the rest of the day. That night, I sat down at my computer and opened a spreadsheet. I started listing every single time I'd bailed someone out since college. Every car payment for Emily, every emergency loan for Lily, every temporary expense that had magically never been paid back. I added in Mom's medical bill from a few years back, the utilities I covered when Dad's check was late, even the random grocery runs where I'd just pick something up. Line after line, the list grew. It was both depressing and therapeutic. When I finished, I sat there staring at the total, 23,162. Nearly $24,000. $24,000 that had vanished from my account over the years, disguised as love, family obligation, and guilt. I could have used that for a down payment, an investment, or literally anything else. Instead, it had been drained away in small bites, like piranhas, picking at whatever scraps I had left. I stared at the number for a long time, the reality sinking in. It wasn't just the money, it was the pattern. The expectation that no matter what they did, I'd fix it. The assumption that because I had my life together, I was supposed to keep everyone else afloat too. So, I did something I should have done years ago. I took a screenshot of the total, opened the family group chat, and attached the image. Then I typed out the message that felt like a small act of freedom. I'm closing the family account. No more withdrawals. The message about closing the family account was supposed to be the end of it. I sent it, muted the chat, and decided I was done playing the role of fixer, bank, and emotional sponge. For the first time in years, I wasn't jumping when my phone buzzed with another favor. And for a while, the silence felt good. But families like mine never really stay quiet for long. The storm always comes back around. It just changes shape. A few months after that last confrontation, everything in the Wright family circus shifted. I found out through my dad that Lily had gone into labor early. She wasn't even 7 months along. The baby came small but strong, a little boy, and he had to stay in the NICU for a while. When Dad called to tell me, his voice sounded heavier than usual. I could tell he was trying to hold it together. He didn't ask me to visit, and I respected that. It wasn't my place to jump in and take charge this time. Then, a few days later, Mom called. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Between sobs, she told me Ryan had left. Apparently, a week after the baby was born, he just walked out. Packed a bag, said he couldn't handle the stress, and disappeared. He hasn't been back since. Lily was crushed. Mom said she was barely speaking, barely eating, and that the doctors were worried about postpartum depression. And of course, after years of treating me like an emergency button, Mom fell back into old habits. She said she needed me to help Lily through this. It was strange because the old me would have jumped in without hesitation. I would have cleared my schedule, driven straight to the hospital, and stayed up all night trying to fix something that wasn't mine to fix. But this time, I paused. I did visit the hospital, but not for Lily. I went to check on the baby, make sure he was okay, and to confirm that the nurses had what they needed to care for them both. Lily was there, pale and exhausted, her eyes red from crying. She barely looked at me, and honestly, I didn't know what to say. So I said the only thing that mattered. I told her that the baby was beautiful, and I hoped she'd get some rest. Then I left. It felt strange walking out of that hospital without taking the burden with me. For years, I'd been programmed to carry the family's weight, to fix every broken thing. But this time, I didn't. I left it where it belonged, with them. A week later, I got another call from Mom. Her voice was quieter this time. Not the guilt-soaked tone I'd grown up hearing, but something softer. She told me she finally understood how much I had done for everyone, how much I had carried without ever complaining. She said the words I never thought I'd hear from her, that they took advantage of me and she was sorry. I could hear it in her voice. She was tired. Not just physically, but emotionally. Tired of the chaos, tired of playing referee, tired of the constant expectation that I'd always clean up after everyone's messes. I told her that I appreciated the apology, and I meant it. But I also told her I wasn't coming back to the old routine. I wasn't going to fall back into being their fixer. She didn't argue this time. She just said she understood and hung up. Since then, things have changed in ways I never expected. Lily moved back in with Mom, and between the new baby and her emotional state, she's pretty much dependent on her for everything. Emily and I barely speak anymore. She still thinks I'm selfish for abandoning the family, which is rich, considering she only ever shows up for dinner when Mom's cooking. Dad calls me sometimes, usually when he's hiding in the garage. He's quieter now, too, and lately he's taken to calling me the smart one. I think he finally realizes that standing your ground doesn't make you cold. It just means you've had enough. It's strange, though. Sometimes I drive past my parents' house on my way home from work. It's an old reflex, I guess. I slow down, see the lights glowing in the windows, and catch a glimpse of the chaos spilling out. Aiden's voice, the baby crying, the sound of Mom talking over everyone. I can feel the noise even through the walls, and standing there at the curb, I always feel this mix of emotions. There's guilt, because I know they're still struggling in their own way, and part of me will always want to help. But there's also relief. Relief that I'm not inside that house, holding everyone together while falling apart myself. Relief that I learned how to stop being the safety net before I burned out completely. It took years, too many favors, and nearly $24,000, but I finally did it. I stopped being the family's backup plan. I stopped being the one they turned to every time something went wrong. I stopped being their permanent solution. Now I'm just Daniel. Not the family's provider, not the fixer, not the stand-in parent. Just Daniel. The guy who works hard, pays his rent, keeps his peace, and finally learned how to say no. And as simple as that sounds, it's the most freeing thing I've ever done.